As we engage with our esteemed panel of speakers and experts, I encourage everyone to consider how we can balance economic growth with environmental protection and social equity. Today, we can identify pathways to enhance resilience, support local livelihoods, and ensure our coastal population's well-being. So thank you for being here, and let's dive into our discussions led by our eminent speakers here on the panel. The session will explore how innovative funding strategies and sustainable economic models, such as the circular economy, can drive environmental resilience and community well-being in coastal regions. 2, discuss how diverse financial mechanisms ranging from public and private partnerships to multilateral grants and local microfinancing are enabling the implementation of green technologies, circular business models, nature-based solutions, and climate-resilient infrastructure. 3, highlight how sustainable development models can strengthen the livelihoods of coastal communities while promoting long-term economic stability and environmental protection. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me now move to our panelists. Each panelist will be given up to 7 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes to speak, and then we will open it up to the floor. So what we will do, I will introduce the panelists as his or her turn comes. So the first speaker is Dr. Salim Rayyan, a GDN board member. He's a professor of economics at the University of Dhaka, who is also the executive director of South Asian Network on Economic Modeling. He obtained his PhD from the University of Manchester, UK, and has extensive expertise in empirical research on trade, economic growth, poverty, macroeconomic policy, and climate change. So, Professor, you have 5 minutes, up to 7 minutes, and then we will move to the next speaker, and I'll introduce the next panelist then. So, Professor, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good morning to all of you. I come from a country, Bangladesh, and you know that it's highly vulnerable to climate change. It is the largest delta in the world, and also we see frequent, incidents of cyclones, the risk of sea level rise, and saltwater intrusion. So these are kind of very common phenomena now in Bangladesh. But when it comes to this, how to address these challenges, I think some of the experience what Bangladesh has already achieved in terms of financing these coastal futures, I think it will have some important lessons for other countries too. So we have success, we have failures too, and we have a long way to go. So how do we really define these coastal vulnerabilities? Bangladesh, is a highly populated country, more than 170 million population. But in the coastal region, around 40 million population, they live there. And as I said, the key challenges include frequent cyclones, tidal surges, erosion, and loss of arable land, and which actually disproportionately affect the poorer people more than others, and who are mostly dependent on agriculture or aquaculture. So what we are witnessing that it's not only the coastal region, because it's a very small country, that the impact on the coastal region, especially because of these climatic changes, is also having impact on the what we call the climatic migration. So people from the south, they're moving up. We see more congestion in the cities, especially two largest cities in Bangladesh, Dhaka and Chittagong. And that is also affecting the livelihood of the population. What we also witness that reduced agricultural productivity, reduced agricultural, especially productivity due to the salinity, rise in salinity, and also shrinking fisheries. That is also very much obvious because of these events. So when it comes to Bangladesh's kind of innovation in this coastal resilience financing, I can mention three broad areas. One is that the public-private partnership, or mostly I would say the partnership with the development partners, especially multilateral agencies, where there is a project called Coastal Embankment Reconstruction Projects in collaboration with the World Bank, which actually this initiative has restored over 1,000 kilometers of embankments, protecting millions from the tide flooding. So that has been a kind of, I would say, so far a success story. Also, there are, through public-private partnerships, we have seen renewable energy microgrids, especially in the coastal villages, previously without electricity, and they now benefit from solar microgrids under PPPs. And there are some private companies who collaborated with the government to take these microgrids to these very remote places. There are also, the other stream is the multilateral grants and investment. Especially there is it's called the Climate Resilient Infrastructure Fund, which supports nature-based solutions such as mangrove restoration to protect against storm surges while enhancing fisheries. And there is also the initiatives funded by the Green Climate Fund, like sustainable shrimp farming in saline prawn areas. The third stream is actually, Bangladesh has been cited as a very success case of the microfinance. So through the microfinance programs, various NGOs, and one of these leading NGOs is Grameen Bank and also BRAC, they actually provided various lending to the villagers in the coastal areas to come up with some initiatives to cope or have this kind of adaptation strategy in this, in this environment, especially to come up with eco-friendly aquaculture or agriculture. And this has kind of impacted on women empowerment too. And that has a very wide range of literature that how these NGOs program, especially through different kinds of credit programs, at the country scale overall level, and very specifically in the rear and the coastal areas to empower women. So what I would, I know I have a very limited time now, but just I want to focus on a couple of challenges. There are some success, but at the same time, there are some serious issues, especially how to mobilize funding to sustain these programs and also to upscale or scale up this program. We know that just the held COP29, there are promises of external funding, but we don't know about the kind of right kind of modalities, how this funding will reach out to countries like Bangladesh. And the amount of funding is the required funding and the promises, we see the huge gap. So at the end, the countries like Bangladesh, they'll have to rely a large part of this financing to rely on the domestic resource mobilization. And that is a big challenge for a country like Bangladesh, where already the tax to GDP ratio is one of the lowest in the world. There are serious institutional problems, institutional challenges in mobilizing domestic revenues. And also when it comes to expenditure, especially spending in important projects like this, in the coastal areas, there are serious institutional challenges with if I mention corruption and other issues. I think addressing these challenges would be extremely important. I'm quite sure that the experience I'm sharing from Bangladesh, which are not very different from experience from many other developing countries. So I'll stop here. Probably in the second round or in the question, I'll try to answer some specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I think there was some very pointed reference to actual on-the-ground mitigation projects. And of course, Bangladesh is known for microfinancing, the next speaker is Dr. Luis Felipe Lopez Cava. I think he's on tuned. He's on our GDN board as well, and is the Director for Poverty and Equity Global Practice at the World Bank Group. He has over 25 years of professional experience working with international institutions and advising national governments. He rejoined World Bank in 2022 from the UN, where he served as a UN Assistant Secretary General and Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean since 2018. His research interests focus on labor markets, poverty and inequality, institutions, and the microeconomics of development. He's an accomplished researcher, having published in highly ranked journals such as the Journal of Development Economics, Journal of Economic Inequality, World Development, Economic Letters, Oxford Papers, and Oxford Development Studies. So, Professor Lopez Cava, you will have up to 7 minutes, and then probably you'll get another round, and then when we open up the floor, there could be some questions. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? So first of all, thank you, and it's really unfortunate that I cannot be there, but thank you for allowing me to be part of the conversation. I will share a presentation, and I will talk briefly to motivate the conversation about our most recent global monitoring report that we called Pathways Out of the Polycrisis, and I will use it as a general framework. As you say, we can go into details later. But the main point of this report that I think that's the reason why I wanted to share with you, because it's really, in addition to being the first post-pandemic assessment of global progress on the goals, the important issue is that it's the first report that actually brings together the two main objectives in our renewed mission, which is ending poverty on a livable planet. So at the end, I will land into a conversation precisely about what is related to blue economy and the relevance of that for the bank. So of course, we have a lot of discussions in terms of mainly in terms of adaptation and how vulnerability is a dimension that has to be included when we talk about poverty. So we really want to talk about the complementarities and trade-offs between the objectives. So we want to end poverty. We need to really foster higher rates of economic growth, the growth that is inclusive, but also we really want to make sure that this is consistent with both protecting people and protecting nature. So what we call it, what matters, do what matters where it matters the most, is precisely this idea that in low income and fragile contexts, we should really prioritize poverty reduction, growth, and multidimensional poverty. In middle income countries, we of course are concerned about growth and vulnerability, but also about scaling up some of these synergies between environment and growth. And finally, high income, it's definitely the priority has to be related to mitigation. Briefly, you know this information, so just for you to, I mean, like a refresher, we have achieved a lot, more than 1 billion people out of poverty, but certainly we're off track to achieve SDG 1, both with the extreme poverty line and certainly with the higher middle income poverty line, for which 44-45% of the world is considered poor. If we take the extreme poverty, it's about 700 million people. It's between 8-9% of the world. There is also a slowdown of convergence, and there is, of course, still 1.7 billion people living in countries with very high inequality. So we care about that, but we also care about vulnerability. So we're proposing a new indicator of vulnerability that combines two things. One is exposure, which is people who are exposed to, as was mentioned before, to flood, drought, extreme heat, and cyclones. And then we also look at their capacity to cope with the shocks. So the interaction of those two is what makes people vulnerable. So this is the size of population, regional, consider this as the universe in every region. This is the universe in terms of people. Then you see the circles, these are people in each region who are exposed. So you see the difference in terms of the proportion of people exposed in different regions. Of course, as you can see, East Asia and Pacific has a majority of people exposed, of course, and South Asia is the same thing. But then if we interact with ways of coping, then we see that, for example, North America, relatively fewer people are vulnerable proportionally, while South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, certainly Latin America and the Caribbean, and large part of East Asia Pacific are still quite vulnerable. So we really want to bring ideas on how to do these two things, growing income for the poor, but protecting people from these weather events and extreme shocks. We talk about, of course, emissions and try to see, focus on the idea that in low-income countries don't contribute that much to emissions, so the emphasis there should be on economic growth. We look at the cost of reducing the cost in terms of emissions when we eliminate poverty. If you look at the red area is for extreme poverty, the cost is not that high in terms of emissions. But if we care about higher levels of welfare, like the 685 poverty line, then the reduction of poverty at that level definitely will have a huge cost in terms of emissions. So we really need to look at trade-offs, constraints, and transition costs. And one aspect in which we really want to focus is this idea of the blue economy. And this is what I want to land to open the conversation. And this is basically how large ocean states, as I would like to call them, can turn the coastal areas into an engine of growth and sustainability. So 2.5 trillion annually is the contribution of coastal and marine-based industries to the global economy, which, by the way, becomes a great opportunity. I can talk about financing in a minute. So the idea is how we can turn this also into an asset or a collateral, so countries can get financing from private in the markets, so that the protection of all these ecosystems and livelihoods could actually become a profitable investment. It's a long-term investment, but it's very important that markets are being developed for that. Just to close, and again, this is just a very, very quick snapshot, the idea that we need to really address this financial gap, particularly for the combination of growth and sustainability. There are a lot of opportunities opening up in the markets. And for that, we need international cooperation, but particularly this idea that in large ocean states, the opportunities are very, very big, and we are looking into that. I'll leave it here for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I noted you, dropped a statement that by 2030 it'll be difficult for the world to achieve or deliver onto the SDGs. Interesting. I also noted that you mentioned that 1 out of every 5 people are at the risk of being experiencing welfare losses due to climate change. Very interesting. And also the potential for PICs to use the blue economy as a leverage growth, given the large EEZs that we are having. Thank you very much. I will now move on to Dr. Courtney Lindsay. He's a senior research officer at the Overseas Development Institute, London. His research interests lie broadly in the political economy of development in small island developing states. He was part of a team that worked on climate resilience and recovery plan for the Caribbean nation of Dominica. He holds a PhD from the University of West Indies. His dissertation focused on small states and policy space in global trade politics. Dr. Lindsay, you have up to 7 minutes. Thank you. And probably, again, you'll have a second bite in the second round.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. So today I'm going to be talking on building knowledge economies in small island developing states and building international and regional partnerships as a means of securing finance. So I'm going to speak on 3 things, basically, I was asked to speak about, which is the circular economy, inclusive finance, and eco-friendly tourism. So starting with the knowledge economy. So what really is the knowledge economy? So in the knowledge economy, we leverage the intellectual capital and take advantage of the 4th industrial revolution and the tools that come with it as a way of fostering innovation and diversifying economies and enhancing the capacity of countries to adapt to the challenges posed by climate change. So what we have happening is that if you look at the World Intellectual Property Organization Global Innovation Index, the only SIDS that is in the top 100 is Mauritius. and it's at 57, not even in the top 50. Now, the second country is Jamaica, which is 99. And the other countries that are on the index fall way into the hundreds, which shows that SIDS are not on their way to building knowledge economies. No, a lot of SIDS aren't even on the index. Singapore is in the top 5, and Singapore, you know, whether you want to believe it or not, is considered a SIDS. Population of 5 million, they share many similar characteristics. So one of the studies we are working on at ODI is how can we build knowledge economies in SIDS? We don't want small island developing states to necessarily try to become like Singapore because they simply can't. A Tuvalu can never become a Singapore, but how can Tuvalu use its intellectual capital and take advantage of the fourth industrial revolution, AI, big data, and all these kind of things floating around to build knowledge economies. So what we find is that in order to do this, small island developing states need a number of things. They need ICT, which comes with digital infrastructure, connectivity, robust data protection, digital literacy. And once they have these, they can use these to build mobile payment system, e-commerce, and other platforms that they can use to build MSMEs. Now, why is this important? Let's go back to tourism. We find that in many countries, even in a record year where tourism arrivals are high and GDP goes up, Human Development Index does not go up with it for that year. Why? That is because MSMEs operating within the tourism sector still don't benefit enough from the tourism sector. So the craft vendors, the hair braid on the beach, the person who rents the beach chair, the person who knit the scarves, etc., isn't included within the broader tourism sector. The big hotels which are owned by investors abroad, which repatriate a lot of the profits. And by the way, a lot of those big hotels are operating in our countries tax-free with massive 20-year tax holidays, so they don't pay any taxes at all. So who really benefit from tourism? Multinational hotels operating in small island developing states. Now, we like to talk about how MSMEs are the backbone of the economy. Well, this is bullshit if we're not taking care of the very SMEs that operate within the economy. And it's difficult to do that because, one, we need to create policies for them to operate. So we need to create a conducive environment for small businesses to operate in. But the biggest thing we need is to create a digital economy, which comes out of having a knowledge economy. So we need mobile wallet systems. What does that mean? Tourists don't walk around with cash anymore. But a small business can't even open a bank account because of the Know Your Customer regulation that comes out of the US and the OECD that blacklists a lot of small countries as tax havens. So to open a bank account in a country like Jamaica can take you at least 2 months. So a lot of MSMEs use their own personal bank accounts, and with that, they can't get point of sale machines. What does that mean? They can't take credit cards. And even if they could, to pay a bank for a year of using a point of sale machine would eat right into their profits, so they can't do it. So what would help countries? Mobile money systems and point systems where tourists can spend money in countries and MSMEs without the bank eating out the profits that MSMEs make. Once you do that, you find that MSME tourism earnings go up. And then they can take care of themselves. They can build their own resilience by making the infrastructure for their business is stronger against, hurricanes and these kind of things, and they can also buy insurance. So that's one of the things we need to also, look at. How the knowledge economy can also help is that it can foster linkages within the industry and inter-industry linkages. So one of the perennial problems we face is agriculture and tourism. A lot of the hotels, particularly in the Caribbean, import a lot of the food that they use to feed tourism, to feed tourists, while tomatoes and carrots and these kind of things within the country stay in the field and rot because there's a disconnect. Still, this is something we've been working on consistently, and there are tools, even in countries like Fiji, that they're trying to use to bridge this gap, but there's still a long way to go because we still don't have data protection, we still don't have internet connectivity, fast broadband, affordable broadband, and all these kind of things that we need to get on top of. And I feel like I'm running out of time. Well, I feel like I just have so much. So how can we fund these kind of things? One of the things that SIDS need to do is start collecting more taxes. And one of the ways we can do this is to harmonize regional taxation system and stop cruise ships and big hotels and multinational corporations from playing SIDS one against the other. I don't know how it works in the Pacific necessarily, but in the Caribbean, this is a perennial problem where we call it a race to the bottom, where a cruise ship goes to Antigua and says to them, well, we'll come and dock at your port, but we want certain tax advantages. If that government doesn't give the cruise ship, they'll say, okay, well, we'll go to St. Vincent. And so you have countries giving more and more concessions to these MSMEs in order to get their business. What we need is a harmonization across the board where we actually collect the taxes. And the World Bank did a study a few years ago, 2021, and what they found that is that if you collect the taxes, the investments will come anyway. So there's no need to give a business a 10-year, 25-year corporate tax break. Let them pay the taxes and use the taxes as a way of earning money to build resilience. So that's one of the other things we need to do in terms of international partnerships. The next thing we need to do is that SIDS simply can't do it by themselves. So we need to continue to advocate at the international level. Mia Motley is doing a good job at this advocating for us with the Bridgetown Initiative, but we also need to also help ourselves. So we need to go to the Green Climate Fund and say, listen, you cannot have a policy in place that says for a country like a Tuvalu or a Fiji to access money for development, they have to show strong adaptation, because for small island developing states, adaptation is development. The two goes hand in hand. So they need to get rid of this rule that unless you show that the money that you're taking from them in grant funding is tied to adaptation, then your proposal doesn't go anywhere. Not that it does anyway, because it takes 3 years to go the system, and that is even if you end up getting the money at all. And in many cases, it's a sunk investment because you have to pay consultants to help you write the proposal. So it's just a big mess where they claim to be helping small island developing states and just exaggerate and exacerbate the capacity issues that we already have, and then they don't help us any at all. So we need that advocacy right there in order to say to the GCF that you need to not have a first come, first serve basis, but have a carve out of $25 million for SIDS every single year. And that is carved out for us. So we don't have to compete for that money. 1, 2, take capacity into consideration when it comes to writing proposal, because a Ministry of Environment in a small country with 3 staff simply does not have the resources to go and do the research that is needed to put together a proposal to satisfy the GCF. When you send 2 consultants to come down and have a training workshop, all you do is take these 3 staff out of their office from the work they should be doing anyway to try to learn how to put together a proposal to get money that's going to take 3 the system. My mic is coming on. I don't know if that means I need to shut up now. But trying to end the rant right here. Hope some good questions come for me to go more into these issues. But like I said, I just want to reiterate 3 points. We need to get on top of building knowledge economies in SIDS. This is where the world is going. SIDS need to be going in that direction as well. To do this, we need international partnerships. So we also need to finance ourselves. We need to collect the taxes from international operators that operate within our waters. And we need to move into community tourism, where we have our citizens get a bigger share of the tourism pie. And the way to do that is get on top of digital mobile payment systems and move toward a cashless society where we can exchange cash and exchange money without having to stand in bank lines and needing point of sales, expensive bank equipment and so forth. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Courtney. I think there was some very strong statements about regional cooperation, use of knowledge economy to capitalize on the industrial revolution, SIDS digital literacy and technology, and how we can use to leverage growth. Thank you, Courtney. We'll now move on to our last panelist, Ms. Taliska DeSanti. Is an ecosystem protection program manager at Live and Learn. She works in partnership with Live and Learn local partners in Macau to support traditional landowners from Vanuatu, Fiji, and Solomon Islands in protecting their forests through carbon finance. Taliska also worked with the African and Indian Ocean governments to develop the adaptation policies and invest in the territory's resilience with the Agency for Franchised Development. So Taliska, thank you very much. Our own Taliska who working in the region, let's hear you out.
Thank you. And I hope I'll keep the level of energy. Thank you, Courtney. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, my name is Taliska. I work for Live and Learn. So we're a network of organizations working across the Pacific and Southeast Asia. And I will present today our approach to forest conservation and regeneration in the Pacific, and specifically its funding through the carbon markets. So I will present what opportunities comes with this approach for climate, nature, and communities, and what can be everyone's role in harnessing these opportunities. I don't have a presentation, so it's only me speaking, but we do have a video to show you at the end with a woman from one of the communities we work with who will share what this all means in reality. So first, a one sentence explanation of what the carbon market is about for people who are not too familiar with it. Basically, companies that emit greenhouse gas emissions, mostly from the global north, can offset these emissions by paying for projects that avoid or sequester greenhouse gas. For example, through forest protection, renewable energy projects, and so on. So our approach to carbon projects, to forest carbon projects, is a high integrity, community-led one, tailored to the Pacific context and centered around benefits for communities. We have a three partners architecture. First, we have a project owner who is the community, who owns the land rights. So that means they own the carbon rights associated with this land. They receive the carbon revenue and they decide how they want to use it. And they are in charge of conservation and forest regeneration activities. The second partner is a local NGO, and that's the Live and Learn country offices, who are experts and in charge of community engagement and support. And the third partner is a social enterprise that we partner with called NACAO. So NACAO is a carbon market and forestry expert specialized with the Pacific context that supports communities in developing and implementing projects in line with carbon market requirements, and is in charge also of selling the credits on the carbon market. So NACAO and Live and Learn were actually the first actors to develop carbon projects in the West Pacific about 10 years ago with the Drawa community in Fiji, the Sur clan in Vanuatu, and the Serebe tribe in Solomon Islands with another partner called NRDF. So this is our approach, but what does it mean for the broader sector? Carbon markets are an opportunity to mobilize a much needed finance to protect and restore forest ecosystems, to contribute to climate change mitigation, to biodiversity conservation, to community resilience, to the impacts of climate change, community well-being, community socio-economic development. They're a huge funding opportunity. Carbon projects have a duration from 30 to 50 years. So it's very different from donors' funding cycles. And this gives the time to community ownership and to ecosystem and socio and economic impact. Ecosystems don't improve over a year or two, they improve over decades. And it gives the time for community to receive carbon income for decades and reinvest it, so that at the end of the 30 to 50 years of the carbon project, they are economically stronger community. It is an opportunity for finance to flow from the global north private sector, which is responsible for climate change, to indigenous people and local communities who are the stewards of about a third of the world intact forests and about a third also of the key biodiversity areas in the world. So yeah, in every international forum, such as the COPs, international initiatives, there are calls for climate finance to reach indigenous people and local communities. This is actually one of the opportunities for that to happen. But there are many challenges. Some of these challenges are around the environmental impact of the project. We need rigorous methods so that the impacts are real and proven. Maybe key three concepts around that. When we talk about forest conservation projects, they have to be additional. That means we have to prove that the forest that we're protecting was actually threatened of being logged. That's something important that we have to prove. We have to prove that the protection is permanent. So after the 30 to 50 years of the carbon project, the permanently protected. And we have to avoid the leakage. So that's the idea that if we prevent logging from happening in one place, the logging company will not just move to another place to log down other trees. So that's the environmental side, but also, and it's actually not stressed enough, there is really a need for rights-based, ethical, community-centered approaches. And this is at the core of our approach with our project, with a strong community ownership and a strict principle of free, prior, and informed consent when working with local communities. So what is everybody's role in making this happen? The development sector has a key role in seizing this opportunity and answering these challenges. So to talk to everybody, first, civil society organizations and NGOs have an expertise in socio-economic and community development, and especially national and local organizations have a critical understanding of the local context and an expertise in community engagement. Donors have a key role through a blended finance approach. So donors can help us de-risk the site scoping and project development stage. They can support small-sized projects, which typically are more expensive and less profitable, so harder to reach market profitability. They can really help us in financing the higher costs of high-integrity approaches. And donors have a role in setting standards and requirements to promote high-integrity projects. The academic world, a lot of you are from the academic world, has such a key role to play in investigating what is being done and challenging the sector to hold low integrity approaches and actors accountable and push for improvement. So beginning of last year, there was 2 big studies by Stanford University and Cambridge University that shed light on very environmentally low integrity carbon projects that really shook the sector, and actually standards really improved their requirements based on these researches. So that was very valuable. And then finally, every actor who has access to international negotiation areas such as the COPs really can advocate for high integrity, community-centered carbon markets. So in Baku at COP29, decision was made on Article 6, that is the article of the Paris Agreement that deals with carbon markets. This is a decision that's really welcome because it sets standards for rigorous environmental impact for carbon projects. But there is definitely a need to have more discussion and standards around promoting indigenous people and local communities access to the carbon finance through carbon markets, securing their land rights, and ensuring they access the benefits linked to this finance.
Thank you, Taliska. I mean, what a way to end this your presentation by showing that how this project could make a difference in terms of provision of critical public goods like water and education. The core focus of your presentation was about how this resource, which is in abundance in the Pacific Island countries, could become a lifelong sustainable source of growth and development if it is managed well by linking up with critical stakeholders, as you mentioned. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll open the floor up now for questions, and then we will come back to the presenters, panelists at the end for a short rounding of comments. So please keep your questions and comments to the point. If you could introduce yourself and ask the question, and also state which panelists you're asking the question. Yes, sir.
Bula, everyone. Thank you. I'm Seva from the University of the South Pacific. Let me congratulate the members of the panel for an interesting insights to the issues we are talking about. My question is directed to Courtney. Courtney, you know, listening to your presentation regarding seeds, it's just too good to be true, yeah? In a sense, all these recommendations, they have been there for years. The transition in society, now we have a cashless and so forth. We adopt to that. But then again, why are we not progressing? Yeah, why we are not progressing? The relationship between developed and the developing divide is still there. And I agree with you. You know, we must have this international partnership. No, this partnership is already there. But then again, there is no genuine effort, you know, to lift the economies, the livelihoods of the people in developing nations like seeds, you know. And interestingly, you mentioned about cruise ships. I'm involved right now in a development in the Azores, where tourism is the main source of income apart from other primary activities. Our problem is the cruise ships, they will go somewhere else if we demand a certain fee. See? And my recommendation, my suggestion is, you know, until we come together, the two partners, in a genuine effort for development, nothing will change. We will always live in an unequal world. Thank you.
You taking a round or go ahead? No, I mean, we're on the same page here. You know, there's a lot has been done. These recommendations go right back to the first SIDS4 conference in 1994. A lot of these recommendations go back there. And it's not like things aren't being done. Let me give you an example. One of the things, as again, that keeps coming up is how do we increase earnings for people operating within the tourism sector? In my previous job, pardon? It's okay. Yeah, in my previous job, we tried to create a mobile money system in Barbados and Jamaica, and it failed spectacularly because we weren't able to get the banks on board in a way that we could have, that would have made it work. So what we tried to do was create, with an Australian company, we tried to work with a number of hotels to create an app. And when the tourists come to the hotel, they would download the app on their phone and then use their credit card to transfer money over to the app. Now, the beach boys and the hair braiding ladies and the guys on the speedboats, on the beaches, etc., who are trying to make some money, they would have the app on their phones. Now, what would happen is that the tourists then would go to the beaches and then they would transfer the points from the app on their phone over to the app on the MSME's phone, the guys, the ladies, etc. And then they would then go back to the hotel and reclaim cash for the points they would have received from the tourists. And we thought this would have been a good idea to increase their earnings because the main problem that we have is that more and more tourists are coming, but they are spending less and less money. So like I said, GDP from tourism is going up, but the earnings from the lower level of the vulnerable tourism operators are actually going down. So we went to the central bank and say, how can you help us fix this problem? They couldn't. They said, first, we have to create a sandbox to test the system because the banking system within the countries aren't built for it. When we ask, how could we get around this issue? Well, we'll have to go all the way up to the higher level to work with the OECD and these big countries that risk blacklisting us if we go ahead with these kind of systems. Now, is it unfair? Fundamentally unfair, because the US doesn't have these problems. They have PayPal, they have Venmo, they have all these kind of systems to just throw money all over the place via your phone. But the moment you try to develop such a system within a small territory, you come upon problems such as know your customer issues where the banks have to follow certain international regulations that prevent things like mobile money from operating. So the recommendations are there, and there are things that a lot of people are trying to do to fix it, but we keep coming up on these roadblocks over and over and over again. And that's just one example.
Thank you, Courtney. We have a question there. If you could just give your name and please keep your question to the point.
Thank you, sir. I'm Owusu from Ghana. So to Professor Salim about the issues in Bangladesh, I want to know what are some of the direct interventions that the Bangladesh government is doing directly to benefit the people living in these coastal areas. And I also want to know your opinion on subsidies, government subsidies, for instance, for farmers to buy farming implement, or for fishers to buy fuel for fishing operation. And also this question extends to our friend from the World Bank. I want to know his thinking, ideas on government provision of subsidies to the most vulnerable people in the agricultural sector, like the peasant farmers and the peasant fishers. And also our friend was talking something about climate justice and land-based resources, mangroves, forests. The people are benefiting directly through this carbon credits. I want to know, since our friend from the World Bank spoke about the blue economy, what are we doing for marine fishes, especially the small-scale fishes? Because they are also at the forefront of climate change, marine sustainability. But I have not heard any new financial instrument that also will benefit directly the livelihood of these fisher folks. So carbon credit for farmers people who are in forestry? How about the marine space? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. We'll go, Dr. Rahim first, and then we'll go to the World Bank speaker.
Okay, no, thank you. A very important question. The government has some subsidies on agriculture, not really specific to aquaculture, but there are some tax benefits for aquaculture, especially in the fisheries. Like, if you are if you have this farming, fish farming even in the coastal areas, you get some tax benefits. So now, what very interestingly, what we have found, some of the very new evidence which are coming up, many of these tax benefits have not really been reached to the real farmers or real producers. Rather, many they actually use those as pretext to evade taxes. They are showing their business that they have their aquaculture, but they have huge income from elsewhere, but they're showing the main source of income from aquaculture, and they are evading taxes. So I see that this is a problem in terms of, as I mentioned in my first deliberation, that huge institutional challenges, like, how do you manage this whole system? How do you provide the right kind of incentive and reach out to the real beneficiaries? And that's a serious problem. And in terms of giving even subsidies to the agricultural farmers, there are some success that we have seen, but it has not really led to, I would say, the use of more eco-friendly or environmental-friendly fertilizer or environmental-friendly techniques, where farmers are still stuck to the old kind of techniques of farming. I think there is a need to actually go back and revisit this whole subsidy and tax incentive policies so that it can actually help the real or genuine farmers in the coastal areas.
Thank you, Doctor. Now we'll go to to get a response from the World Bank representative, Dr. Lopez Cava. Doc, you there?
Right, yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
My response would be more general. As you know, I'm mainly involved in the area of poverty and inequality, and in general, I would say that when it comes to these very specific instruments, I'm happy if you send me an email to send you more information. But I can tell you certainly, in the case of instruments, the most common thing that has been explored is debt for nature swaps in different countries, and there have been sustainability bonds issued with support of the bank in different countries. But again, this depends really on the context and so on. In terms of what you mentioned about the subsidies, I think in general, the idea is that we try to make the point that the fiscal stimulus should be for very productive, to support productive livelihoods, and to try to link it to commercially sustainable type of activities. But I think there are many examples that we can also share with you of very successful successful interventions that have been supported by the bank. So happy to share that information upon request.
Thank you, sir. I will go at the back there, gentlemen.
My name is Yone from the University of the South Pacific. I have two questions. One to the gentleman from Bangladesh. The Grameen Bank, very successful. I read a lot of its success. Can you please share some other success stories of that bank on how they managed to reduce poverty? And I'm sure they also have some packages on climate financing. The other question is for my friend from the Caribbean. You have proposed to have a knowledge society, especially on the MSMEs. I have a study last year in one of the municipalities in Fiji on the success factors of MSE, micro small enterprises. And one of the factors that I wanting to collect from the owners, the IT use, one of the enabling environmental factor, IT use. And the IT use was removed from the from the model because it was not, the response was not enough to use it. So what do you base your proposal to use to totally move into a knowledgeable society? Because most of the MSME owners, those who drop out from school, it takes time for them to learn how to use IT. I mean, the information technology. Can you elaborate more on that, please? Thank you.
Thank you for this question on the Grameen Bank. Grameen in Bangla language, Bengali language means village. So it's you can say it a village bank. So it was founded by Dr. Mohammad Yunus. And if you want to mention one of the successes of Grameen Bank on a kind of lighter note, that Dr. Yunus has become the Prime Minister of Bangladesh now. So he, in the interim government, if we can consider it as one of the successes as well. But to more on a serious note, yes, the Grameen Bank, the way they try to provide small credits to the, especially to the poorer households, targeting mostly the women. I think that really made it a kind of a game changer. And so it contributed quite a lot. And actually, there are many empirical studies and many even impact assessment studies looking into the impact of these microcredits on the livelihood of the rural households, and which have shown that despite their criticisms, at a larger scale, there are some positive impacts on the livelihood of the poorer households, even in the coastal region. But to name only or to give the credit to Grameen Bank is not fair, because probably you have heard there is another non-governmental organization called BRAC. So BRAC is in fact, is the largest NGO in the world, and they have operations not only in Bangladesh, but many other countries as well. So I would say that the last 5 decades in Bangladesh, the success stories of these NGOs were actually in a space where state was not being able to deliver some basic services to the poorer people. And these NGOs actually played a very critical role in filling up those spaces. And I would say that it's not only livelihood, but also providing basic education, basic health services, creating awareness, women empowerment. All these kind of very positive impacts or results of this, Grameen Bank and other NGOs. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. I loved it. Now, 2 things. I want you to think about M-Pesa in Kenya. It works beautifully, and it works both among the young and the old alike. And what we need to do is to just make the technology simple. Let me use an example of in the Caribbean, again in St. Lucia. One of the problems one of the ways they are trying to solve this problem of curbing food imports and connecting the farmers to restaurants that serve tourists as well as the hotels is to use WhatsApp. So what you have is that they create this WhatsApp group that they put all the hotel chefs in the WhatsApp group and all the managers of the restaurants in the WhatsApp group. So 60 chefs and managers. And you have about 600 farmers across the country. And you just lump all of them in one WhatsApp group. They don't need to be able to type. They can just talk. You can send a voice note to a chef and say, look, I just reaped 50 pounds of carrots. Does your restaurant need any carrot? Let's negotiate. I can sell you carrots for $2 a pound. And what you have is that food import came down by 15% in the first year in St. Lucia alone, just using WhatsApp. Now, how can you facilitate this? If you don't have data connectivity, it's not going to work. So a farmer, like I said, doesn't need to know how to read and write. He just needs to know how to talk, which he can, and he can send a voice note. But if he can't get data signal on his farm in the village, it's not going to work. And if it's going to cost him $50 US a month to put data on his phone. It's not going to work. So the challenge for government regarding policy is how can you increase broadband connectivity across the board, one, and how can you make it affordable? My thing is make it cheaper. We have Digicel and we have B-Mobile bringing other operators within the market to make it cheaper. The next thing is yesterday at our session, we had this beautiful presentation from a colleague of mine from India. And she was telling us how Indian villages are building resilience using children. Because what they have is that they have chickens in the villages and they find that the chickens are dying out from epidemics. And so they had this idea to use children, literally children, to go around the villages and immunize the chickens. Not adults, but children. So we can target the very old with the technology and we can target the very young. We just need to, for the older people, we just need to make it simple. And for the younger people who have this bursting capacity to learn, we just need to give them the confidence to do it.
Thank you, Courtney. Any other question? Yes, gentleman at the back, and then we'll after that. Yes, sir. If you could give your name and.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Espen Ronneberg. I'm a senior advisor on climate change with the Secretariat of the Pacific Community. I just have one point and then a question. It's regarding carbon markets. When an industry in a developed country emits CO2, it's pretty much for forever if we think about our timescales. So the offsetting of forests is all well and good for the 30 to 50 years. But after a certain point, the forest stops. It goes into equilibrium. It no longer absorbs more carbon. But the emissions from the developed industry has already gone into the atmosphere and will stay there for a very, very long time. My question is about the project in Vanuatu. So I saw that they were trying to eradicate Meremia. What were they? Are they utilizing the Meremia for anything? Because I know of a project in Samoa where the Meremia was one of the feedstocks going into a biofuels or biogas project. Sorry. Thank you.
Is Morambia similar to African tulip? Very different. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Maybe just to clarify, I think it's two questions. The second one, you share that in Samoa, Meremia is used as a biofuel. Is that it? Okay. The first question maybe around. I just want to share the understanding that carbon markets are not the solution. We cannot continue with a heavily carbonized, heavily polluting world economy and just consider that we're gonna offset emissions by through carbon markets. We need massive decarbonization of the economy and massive protection of intact forests and reforestation. So it is one funding source. It is not the whole solution, definitely. And on the Meremia, I think I cannot answer you. I don't think this is something we do on our project sites. The approach is simply clearing the invasive species Meremia and then assisted regeneration of the forest through actually a phased agroforestry approach. So it's growing agroforestry plots and along the years growing different species that grow under, the different size and shadows of the associated trees, and at some point leaving the forest to itself. But it will be interesting to hear your experience around reusing Meremia as a biofuel. That's not something we're implementing at our project sites.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you to the panelists. I'm Ed Morgan from Griffith University. My question is also to Taliska around the carbon markets. And I wonder if you have any views on whether the carbon markets are showing any signs of recognizing high integrity, good quality projects, particularly around community-based ones, the sort of ones that you've been doing, and also whether there's any trends to improving accessibility for these smaller projects to allow smaller communities to actually access this, which feels like a big problem, that the MRV requirements and the method requirements are so top down and so complex that they seem very hard for people to access. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And again, I'm not sure I will be able to fully answer it. I think there is from what I am seeing, there is a focus on the international stage around the environmental impact of carbon projects. So, and this is really good, making sure impacts are not exaggerated, are real and are ambitious. And there is also, and that is a very top-down approach of, how are these emission reductions or removal going to be reported within the Paris Agreement framework and NDC, MRV, yeah, as you mentioned. I don't see much around community-centered approaches. I might be missing it, but and then there is the international arena, but there is also business to business communication. So I'm saying I'm not able to fully answer the question also because, as I was saying, we partner with NACAO, which is a social enterprise who is in charge of selling of the carbon credits. So NACAO is in direct contact with companies that want to offset their carbon. And because we develop small size projects, we're able to have really this close relationships with companies. We don't go through carbon credit brokers who sell to wider. So that's actually in our kind of marketing strategy. We definitely put the focus on the community benefits. So the NACA website is full of stories from what is actually the impact for community, and this is really where we center our impact. So I know that there are companies buying carbon credits who are very much on board with the community-centered approach.
Thank you, Taliska. Any other questions from the floor? Yes, madam.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yvette, and I'm from Vanuatu. I'm a student here at USP. My question will be directly to the Live and Learn. So I would like to thank you for highlighting the improvement or rigorous data management in the country or in the Pacific. My question is, although there are a number of trainings on data management or improving data quality, yet we see that most of the technical support were always from the international experts. I would like if, number of leaders here in the room, if in the future, it provide policies and requirements that if our new graduates from university can take up these responsibilities to, given that they have the experts in their own country, and also they would provide the contextualized approach to provide this data or improve the data management in the country. I hope I'm clear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't have much of an answer other than I totally agree. And thank you for saying this. And this is something we do as much as possible. So Live and Learn's country offices, there is no international person. It's in Vanuatu. The Live and Learn country office is 100% Vanuatu staff. Same in Fiji, same in Solomon Islands, and so on, because we really know that the country staff is an expert in engaging with communities, in understanding the context. And then when working with communities, we do sometimes have international staff coming to work with communities and give training around, for example, one key aspect in the Forest Carbon Project is monitoring the forest. So being able over the 30 years of the Carbon Project to monitor has logging actually happened in the forest? Has the forest grown? Has biodiversity improved? So there is training from external experts, but with local rangers, so that on the long term, the local rangers are conducting the work.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think we'll now move towards the rounding up statement. 1 minute each, starting from Dr. Rahman. Some key points you would want to make before you end this panel.
No, thank you. I think the challenge, what I see in countries like Bangladesh, and I've given you the number, around 40 million people live in the coastal areas, which is Nepal has a population of 20 million, 20 or 22 million. Sri Lanka has around that size. So if you combine Nepal and Sri Lanka, Bangladesh has the same population size living in the coastal area. It's a huge population, a very small piece of land. So I think if you really want to have a sustainable livelihood for these people, in my view, the challenge is how do you really attract commercially viable investment there, which is environmentally sustainable. And this is, I would say that this remained as a challenge, and this will continue to remain as a challenge because the way the economy has grown, the kind of structural transformation of what we have seen over the years, we haven't seen that much of bigger or major structural break in the way I'm kind of anticipating or expecting to have this kind of commercially viable private sector investment going there, which are environmentally sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Luis Lopez Cava, 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have learned a lot from this session. I just want to insist on this logic. First is that if we really want to achieve SDG 1, which is about ending poverty or eradicating global poverty, we really need to be creative in terms of how we bring together the different objectives, making it not only inclusive in terms of the growth, not only inclusive, but also very, very aware of the climate-related challenges. So this is the main, I would say, the main redefinition of the development challenge on the way forward. And particularly when we talk about large ocean states, I think we need to, I really like the comment that was made about the idea that adaptation is actually development in those cases. Actually, how to turn that geographical condition into an opportunity, not only in terms of what kind of activities, as was mentioned before, activities that are profitable but also sustainable, but also making it an asset, potentially a collateral for financing. So that the nature becomes an asset to try to use that for nature swaps and other type of sustainability bonds that the market is really developing. So lots of opportunities ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Dr. Lindsay?
Yes, just to reiterate that, like I said, small island developing states face pressing economic and no environmental challenges. And the opportunities we have now is through building knowledge economies. I personally can't see any other way out of this. We can't keep relying on tourism. We need to diversify our economies, but we simply don't have the scale, we don't have the land mass, we don't have the resources to move into many other areas. So we simply have to use the best resource we have, which is our human capital. So what are we going to do with it? That's what we need to figure out. So most of our developmental challenges, whether we're talking pollution, whether we're talking about protecting our ecosystems, countries are already doing this. You know, the Maldives have this program where they're using remote sensing, they're using underwater vehicles and AI to monitor their coral reefs and to actually rebuild their coral reefs. So how can more countries tap into using these kind of Industry 4.0 technologies? You have countries using ideas like educate your citizens and ship them abroad and let them send back remittances as a way of building, you know, local economies. That's another way of doing it as well. And it doesn't involve, you know, putting everybody into universities, but find countries that they can migrate to and figure out what are the needs of these countries and then train our citizens in those skills and have them move abroad to work. This is already happening, but how can we move from just sending farm workers abroad to cut sugar cane and pick apples, but actually to go and do higher level work that pays more money that they can send back? At the same time, how can we rally international banking systems to cut banking fees and Western Union to cut remittance fees so that more money end up in our countries? So there's a lot we can do in terms of the knowledge economy. So we have the tourism. We need to now tap into our minds to diversify both across and virtually, because the knowledge economy can be used to diversify within the tourism sector as well to diversify the products. So, all right.
Thank you. Taliska?
Yes,
Over to you.
thank you. Well, I would like to end with a call for action and everybody's contribution. We all have to work towards community-centered, rights-based climate finance. For carbon markets, you know, I presented a positive picture, and I don't want to end on a negative one, but I do want to mention that carbon projects can also be done with no respect for customary land rights, no community benefits. So this is something we have to work on to avoid, and all contribute, that includes governments as well, contribute to setting high standards for indigenous people and local communities to be the one to access carbon finance, and in a way that's fair and respectful of their rights.
Thank you. I think we have, you know, heard a lot from Bangladesh, one of the most populous country in the world. He mentioned about the population of Nepal and Sri Lanka in the coastal area of Bangladesh. Amazing, you know, and how you handle those challenges there. We heard about the knowledge economy, as mentioned by Dr. Courtney, how we could use forests to leverage the livelihood of some of these communities where there's a good stock of forest resources. So I will now hand it over to Francisco. I think we have done well in this session. And I want to thank all those who have contributed to this session and the panelists here today. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, World Bank. Thank you.